get this pulled up. Okay, well, members of the board, thank you so much for hearing my application. I'm excited to be here to share a little bit more about what my hopes for this site are. And my apologies, I have it up here, and I maybe should have printed these out for you, but I'm just going to give you kind of introduction myself, my background, share a little bit about how we arrived at the site plan we arrived at, and some details about the variance that we're seeking from you this evening. I'm personally a third-generation community developer and home builder. And sorry, did you need anything?
Oh, it's going to make it bigger.
Can you speak just a little louder?
Yes, absolutely. Y'all were laughing way too much earlier. I don't think zoning hearings are supposed to be as fun as you're making it. Well, I'm a third-generation community developer and home builder. My grandfather, my father, they were both developers and home builders, and so I, had the opportunity to grow up building homes and seeing what it means to build communities in areas, and that's what I've really always been drawn to, is the ability to kind of create new neighborhoods, create new places, and create new places for people to live. I think that so much about people's quality of life is driven by where they live, and that's what's attracted me to this. What really drew us to the area where our site is, and we're at 126 and 130 Main Street. As a reference point, that's on Main Street. If you're kind of crossing Shaker Bridge and heading into town, it's on the left, kind of across the street from the Frog Pond as a reference point, kind of big white house with red shutters there today. But what we really love is how walkable this is to many of the great amenities in Enfield. Walkable to downtown Enfield, Lakeside Park, the lake itself, of course, many of the trails, the Northern Rail Trail. And what we really love in projects we do is the ability to not just have homes plopped down in the middle of nowhere, but places that you can walk to. And I think that that's a big part of having a really great lifestyle when you're living in a community. What as we were looking at the existing neighborhood, we're thinking about is how the property we have really connects what is the historic village boundary. And our property is actually quite literally the first listing in the town's application for a historic district registry. The #1 listing as the entry point to the historic village is our site. And so we view it as kind of this connecting point between the historic village and how it's developed and the more recent build out of Enfield in this area. And that it's kind of a compelling place to embrace the history of the site, but also build to what is needed in Enfield today. What we have is 3 parcels, 2 of which we own today, and 1 of which we have under an option agreement with neighbor Nikki Nash, for a total of approximately 16.42 acres. I will note, in case anyone's checking, that doesn't quite match the tax card for the property. When we did our survey, we found that some of the dimensions on the tax card just were not accurate, and so this is the more accurate representation of our site, smaller than what the town has on the tax rolls today. Some things that make this site unique: it's for the R1 district in kind of Enfield Village land use area, a very large parcel with very odd dimensions. Its boundary is over a mile long. It's nearly 2,000 feet from one end to the other. In some places, though, it's only 200 feet wide. So this kind of strange geometry makes it a challenging site to develop. And then on the northern boundary, we share a boundary with Oak Grove Cemetery, and there are some wetland conditions on the site. All of these make it a unique parcel in the R1 district when it comes to developing the site. This is the area we've chosen to focus on for the proposed development. What we don't want to do is clear cut a bunch of forest and build this property like the max that zoning would allow for. We're trying to create something that's really cohesive and a compelling community that people will want to live in, not maximize every dollar out of the site. We're really driven by the mission of creating high quality places. And that's why we're focusing on this area, what I would call the area that kind of bridges what used to be the historic village boundary to some of the more historic or more modern development edge. Here's some of the conditions on the site that make it unique in the R1 district. We, as I mentioned, have the cemetery boundary. In the state of New Hampshire, cemeteries require setbacks beyond what local zoning requires. And then we also have a wetland system on the site. I've noted both of these here. The wetland was flagged by our wetland scientist and picked up on our most recent survey. And then the cemetery boundary is just a existing condition across that northern boundary. The neighboring parcel that we have an agreement to purchase a portion of the parcel. I've highlighted here the kind of approximate area that we would be able to purchase from the neighbor. The parcel's overall 3.5 acres. We're looking at the purchase of just 2.5 of those acres directly abutting our site. There's an existing right-of-way on this site to the benefit of owners of lot 3250 and 32-42. So it's for general pedestrian and vehicular access across that route. And I've highlighted that route in red. As we were looking at what we wanted to do on this site, knowing we're housing folks, what we really started with was the town's master plan and what the town says it wants to see in this area. I've highlighted our location. I know it's a little bit small up on the screen there, but we sit in the Enfield Village district. It's kind of highlighted in orange on the screen, and we use that as really the launching off point of how we were thinking about this site. Specifically, the master plan calls for attracting new housing to areas within and adjacent to the historic bounds of the village, which is right where this is, and envisions growth and new construction in Enfield Village, but balancing that with the preservation of significant buildings and respect for the scale and pattern of the historic village. Forwarding to the housing chapter of the master plan, it also calls for a greater diversity of housing types, particularly smaller units. And the recent large contributions to housing that are going through planning right now represent one type of housing in this area, and other types of housing that have been built more recently include more high-end single-family homes. And so what we are really trying to do is fit in the middle there. We're not building high-end luxury single-family homes. We're not building a big apartment, which in some ways is an easier thing to build in this location. We're trying to build something that is respectful of the village character and scale and fits within the historic settlement pattern of Enfield. As we were looking for how to approach providing what the master plan calls for on this site, we spent a while actually looking at what are some of the best, most celebrated residential communities that meet these criteria anywhere in the country. And these are some of the images that we draw from. Actually, I have a whole book about some of these and some of the best communities in the country. I'd be happy to pass that around if anyone wants to take a look. But we really looked at what are the great precedents? How can we bring in an incredible living community? And where can we draw this inspiration from? And it's just a few examples. This is one of the classic, what people would call kind of a cottage court community. This one is in Washington, so it's Washington State. It's further away, but one of the kind of early examples of a really great community that has grown and really loved by the residents. There's kind of a cult following by the people who live here, and very few homes ever sell here because once people move into the community, they never want to leave. One a little bit closer to home is down in the historic town in Massachusetts of Concord. What they've done is create a kind of small pocket neighborhood of smaller footprint homes. Same thing, not a lot of homes sell here because once people move in, they tend to not want to leave. And we're a big fan of this one. It's a little bit closer to home for us. And then one of the things we looked at is actually like right here in Enfield, what are some great residential neighborhoods that have maybe a smaller footprint of home, maybe a little bit more compact in how it was built out, but some great shared amenity spaces. And this is one of the examples that we really fell in love with as we studied how to build something that would be very embracing of what the master plan calls for in this location. We then sought out a great team to try and build this with. I'll highlight Union Studio Community Design and Architecture's led the community design for our project. They're one of probably the most celebrated community design planners in the country. They're based in New England, but they do work all over the country. They've actually been hired through a competitive RFP process by towns in New Hampshire to lead master planning efforts for towns. And so they're a very reputable firm. And then we also have partnered with Wilcox and Barton, who has experience in titling and doing civil engineering work for projects here in Enfield. Based in New Hampshire, very active in their community. And we were drawn to both the kind of cultural fit and also body of work of both these professional teams. And just stepping back again, is before we kind of get to the site plan we did, this is again what we're trying to do is connect the historic village boundary with the new, more modern development edge in a way that feels cohesive with the scale of the village, the pattern of development, that'll be embracing of the natural elements that are there and celebrating of them, and with architecture that feels natural to this area. We kind of came up with guiding values for our work of creating community that people want to live in, where neighbors know neighbors and enjoy spending time together and are happy to greet each other from a front porch, where we're leaning into the natural elements that are most beautiful in Enfield and celebrating those, and creating a community that's really kind of wellness first through its access to walking trails and really the walkability of the site. And so what we end up with is a community of kind of front porch, smaller footprint homes where homes have easy access to shared amenities, shared green spaces, named after and celebrating the historic family that owned the home and the farm on this location, the Woodbury family that lived in the home from roughly 1850 to, I believe, 1920. That's where the name comes from. And as a part of our effort, our kind of like the acre part of our effort is preserving the historic home on the site, preserving the historic barn on the site, and turning those into really the entryway into this community and a celebrated part of the community. This is the site plan concept that we've come up with. Like I said, it's designed around preservation of the existing buildings on the site and the creation of homes clustered around green spaces. We're not maximizing the density on the site. We're trying to be respectful of wetland areas, sensitive areas. That's why the road is taking so many kind of twists and turns in its design. But this is what we, as a conceptual plan, have come up with pending this variance that it would allow us to move the project forward and further finalize some of the details here. Phase one would be kind of 12 cottage homes in addition to a multifamily building closer to Main Street. Originally, I actually told the architect we wanted to do some additional cottage homes along Main Street. They pushed back and said that wouldn't fit the scale of the other homes that are on Main Street. We should do something that's better suited for the Main Street presence. And so that's why we have kind of a small multifamily. It'll probably be like a small townhome building right in front along Main Street. Something that fits the character of the larger historic homes along that street as you enter the village. And then phase two is a kind of secondary common green space with homes clustered around. We've placed homes in a way to minimize the removal of trees that are on the site, to minimize disruptions to wetland areas, really try to do a lot to embrace the natural elements and minimize the long-term impacts. It's not to say that there won't be any impacts to trees or to corners of the wetland area, but we are trying to design it in a way that would long-term minimize those impacts. The variance we're seeking is for, as Rob mentioned, 401 paragraph, ordinance 401.1 paragraph U, no lot shall have more than one principal building. Put simply, what we're hoping to do in creating a cohesive community and working with like a great site planning designer is to create a community that feels like it's natural to this area. And to put it frankly, like following the ordinance as it strictly is listed, having like large 75-foot frontage lots, cutting down a lot of the trees to accommodate that would not create something that we feel is in line with the character of Enfield. It would create kind of a worse result and wouldn't fit within this Enfield Village area. So this allows us to move forward with a project that's not only more financially feasible and allows us to have a lower price point on the homes that we can then sell to, in large part, we're hoping residents in Enfield that want to move closer to the downtown, but just create a more compelling living experience overall while respecting the natural beauty of the site. I will call out a variance hearing is specific to the site, but there are a number of communities throughout Enfield that, if they were to be built today, would require this same variance. One example, Lakeview Condominium, multiple principal buildings on a single lot. Shaker Landing, multiple principal buildings on a single lot. And I'll go back to one of the inspiration communities we had, Lower Shaker Village. This today would not be allowed under zoning. The best thing you could do, the closest way you could get to a community that looks like this today is to get the variance that we are applying for today, and to build it as what's called a detached condominium community. Detached condominium communities, very common all around the state. I've just highlighted a couple of examples, but it's a way to have all like homes that are owned by individual households, but on one single parcel. What that enables is professional management and maintenance long-term of the community, that the landscaping's managed by a third party that manages the entire community. So you end up long-term with a better looking community without the deferred maintenance that might otherwise pile up in a community where every owner owns their own home. So you get a better community long-term, and again, it's very common not only throughout the state, but throughout the country. But these are, just examples near and far in the state of this exact same structure. I do want to highlight, I'm sure there'll be many comments, but we have a lot of permitting in front of us. So this is step one that allows us to move forward with the rest of this and finalize a lot of details. But through this process, we will, once we finalize our site design, come back for a special exception for the wetland crossing we'll have to do. We've tried to minimize the impact of that wetland, but we will almost certainly need to come back for a special exception. We're We're going to have site plan review, subdivision review. There's going to be state permitting for DES for wetland dredge and fill, DES for alteration of terrain, driveway permit for Department of Transportation. And I highlight this just to say that things related to traffic impacts, stormwater management, wetland impacts, all of that is going to be studied, and we will have rigorous engineering standards we have to meet for those topics in case that's a topic of concern for anyone in the room. That will be studied. We'll have to go through a process. But tonight, this is just a step that allows us to even move the ball forward in furthering our engineering work on this site. Happy to spend some time hitting each of the criteria. You all have a lengthy application in front of you already that I wrote, touching on each of the 5 criteria, but just in brief, we don't feel that granting of this variance will be contrary to the public interest. We are almost to the letter providing what the master plan calls for on this site. Housing is much needed in this area. This area is in a housing crisis, and we are trying to provide exactly that in the residential district. This site is on municipal water and sewer that we intend to make use of. It's walkable to many of the community amenities, and development of the site will be not only compliant with the master plan, but we feel actually contributing to the public interest. But the weighing of this criteria, we need not prove that we'll be in favor of the public interest. We just need to show that we're not going to be contrary to public interest, and we feel that a residential development on water and sewer in a residential neighborhood is not going to be contrary to the public interest. The spirit of the ordinance, we feel, is really driven to not overcrowd sites. The nature of this site being one of the largest kind of land assemblies in the R1 district in the Enfield Village area, we are building this in a way that we are not maximizing the density that in theory one could apply for if they were wanting to. We're trying to be very respectful of the natural beauty of the site, the mature trees that are on the site. And so what we're building is a residential community in every respect that we feel is quite in line with the ordinance, and again, follows what the master plan requests for this location. Substantial justice. If this variance is not granted, we feel it would be a substantial loss to us as the applicant. Having one of the largest residential parcels in the R1 district on a site with access to municipal services, water, sewer, easy walking distance to downtown and all the downtown shops, to the lake. Being able to only build a single principal building on this site feels like a kind of gross underutilization of the site, not just for us, but frankly for the town overall. And we feel that it would be much better served by having the ability to build multiple buildings in a cohesive community on this location. And then ultimately developing a residential neighborhood in the R1 district does not, in fact, harm the public. The development of this following all the requirements of site planning ordinances, subdivision ordinances, state environmental permitting, even traffic regulations through DOT, because Main Street is under state jurisdiction, that granting this variance in the development of this community will not, in fact, harm the public. Or sorry, that granting of this will, denying this will not benefit the public. There's no gain to the public from denying this, sorry. As far as the diminishment of property values on the site, I've touched on a few of these, that this structure of ownership, having multiple parcels on the same site, enables us to have permanent professional property management that takes care of the site, is one of the things that ensures long-term good stewardship of the land. In addition, we've gone to great efforts to hire who we think are some of the best people to design communities like this, not just in New England, but in the entire country. And so we think what we're building will be a great enhancement for this location. And the fact that we're going to be doing renovation work to improve the historic buildings on the site, preserve them rather than knocking them down and doing something else with the land, will further improve the kind of walk along Main Street as it exists today. To substantiate some of this, we requested Vanessa Stone just offer her honest opinion as one of the most experienced local Enfield-based real estate brokers, and one of the few who's done transactions in this neighborhood. And she kind of agrees with our opinion that development of this project as proposed would not diminish neighboring property values. I'd also note that in this neighborhood, there's some additional, more kind of commercial and heavier use, and the neighborhood seems to have absorbed that use well. And so the idea of developing a smaller, lower impact residential community on this site doesn't seem to be something that would diminish local property values. And finally, literal enforcement of this ordinance would result in a necessary hardship. The weighing of this is based on, as you all know, having no fair and substantial relationship between the provision and its application in this case. In our case, we have highlighted some of the unique features about this site that make it different from all other sites in the residential 1 district. The fact that we have the cemetery boundary, the very unique geometry being almost 2,000 feet long and in some cases only 200 feet wide in parts. Its uniqueness means that the literal application of this would be a gross underutilization of the site and not create a good outcome for the site or the town. And then also the proposed use being a reasonable one is the other item you all have to weigh. And again, the idea of a well-designed, cohesive to the historic settlement pattern of the village residential community in the R1 district feels like quite a reasonable use in this R1 district. So with that, been talking way too long. I feel we meet the 5 criteria of what is needed to grant this variance. And again, a variance is very much in line with what is needed to develop many of the larger commercial projects or many of the residential projects of size in Enfield today that were built before zoning. But I'd like to turn over for any questions. I appreciate you allowing me the time to ramble, maybe a little too long there. But thank you for your time.
Thanks, Adam. All right, board members, do you have questions for Mr. Grounds?
What's the plan for vehicle storage for parking? I couldn't tell if it was like a garage thing or if it's no covered parking.
What we have in the site plan today is 1 garage space per unit and then 1 uncovered space. There'll be dedicated 2 parking spaces.
Attached, it won't.
We have right now, and again, this is what we're calling for is detached kind of some clustered parking areas. And so we would have call it a shared garage where each garage bay would be private. There'd be walls between each one, but 3 garage bays in a single building as a way to cluster some of the parking and create more cohesive residential areas. What we don't want to do is design a community around how people are getting cars in and out. We want to design it around how people want to live once they're in the community.
Yeah. Just one piece on, as you know, the rubber meets the road with a lot of these is this hardship piece, right? And one thing that I saw in the written presentation, if you could speak to really quickly, is the distinction with what it would look like if you didn't lay it out this way and you did just your typical grid subdivision. What would be the impact? I mean, I know what it says here, but I kind of would like to hear it.
Yeah, so in effect, and I might just stand up to show you this, and I'm sorry it's so small from down there, but given the really long dimensions of this site, to create something like this, we'd be clear cutting, I don't know exactly how far into the trees, but to get the same number of homes, we'd be clear cutting well into this tree line. We'd be having a much wider street, which is fine. I mean, if we went that route, we'd also be probably trying to hand over the long-term maintenance of the street and the infrastructure we'd be building to the town. In this case, it stays private, which means the people that live there are responsible for the long-term ownership. But it'd be the clear cutting of most of this. The homes would be far apart because of the 75-foot frontage that's required. What that really translates to, the amount of frontage makes for a very unaffordable home. So we totally redesigned the community. We would not be producing homes that we feel are to the benefit of what's called for. We'd be producing probably $800,000, $900,000 homes. And it also, I don't know, I don't know if that's really the feasible development. It doesn't come across as financially feasible. But I don't know if we could do it with the wetland impacts also.
Right, it'd be a significant site work and disturb quite a bit.
Yes.
Doing it.
We'd end up with, if we were able to build it, very expensive homes, huge distance between the homes that's not really cohesive with being in the village. And it'd be, incredibly expensive.
And these community spaces that are part of the plan, obviously they'd go by the wayside.
They'd be gone. There would not be the community amenities we have today. We would more directly have to cross the wetland. Right now, we've designed it to minimize our impact to the wetland. We would have to try to have a crossing. I mean, if we had to just put a street right down the middle, it'd be a much greater wetland impact, which again creates more expense and permitting.
I just have one last question, and then I promise I'll be quiet, Bill. Street lights, things like that, because light pollution is a concern that people bring to us. So is there a plan for that? I mean, if there isn't yet, there isn't.
We'll certainly have some lighting around the community, but what we really love is the concept of a dark sky community where you're protecting that night sky view. And we think that's really important here. I mean, one of my favorite, like I love a great night sky, and that's one of my favorite things about this site right now is it is quite dark in the evenings. So we aim to protect that, and that'll be a big part of our site planning, to put it plainly, until we have a variance that allows us to.
And again, that's all planning board stuff.
Yeah, that'll be part of the site plan review.
Yeah, okay, that's it from me, Bill.
Sure. Thanks, Tim. Yes, Susan?
What's going to be the price range for this housing? That's one question. And a comment, there's already quite a neighborhood up there off, I think it's Sargent Street.
Yeah.
Up there are houses and people and traffic, and that yellow building on the corner, that's
Beautiful
a
house.
Shaker building.
Yes.
And there's another Shaker building up there too. So I'm wondering what the income level of people who will be able to buy these houses.
So we are, through this site plan, trying to be mindful of creating essentially an efficient to build home and an efficient to build community, so we can keep a price point that feels more attainable. That's our long-term goal of building homes in the Upper Valley area. We see a huge need for building more affordable and attainable homes, and we've done it in other areas of the country. This is just our kind of first take at doing a community in this area. And so I don't have an exact answer for you today on here's exactly what it's going to cost. A lot's going to come down to where our final infrastructure costs come in, final construction costs, but we are aiming to have a solid offering below the median price of homes in New Hampshire.
Below the median price.
Below the median
in New
price of
Hampshire,
homes in New Hampshire. Yeah.
which is currently around $500,000.
It is. I will say if we're able to achieve that, that would still be the, I think, lowest cost new construction home in the area by a decent margin. So it's very expensive to build in this area. It's really challenging. If we don't get this variance, like I said, the alternative is bigger streets, more space, and a much more expensive home. So we are really trying to do this not to like maximize our developer profit. We're doing this and this layout as a way to create smaller footprint homes that we feel like we can offer at a more attainable price point.
How many bedrooms? 2, 3?
2 to 3 bedrooms. Yeah, and our intent is to have probably 3 to 4 floor plans, some of which will be a 1-story floor plan, maybe like a 1-story, a 1.5-story, and a 2-story floor plan. We see a huge need and demand for having 1-story homes that don't have a lot of steps in it, that are new, easier to take care of, have lower maintenance costs, and we hope to build that because we see it as a big need in this community.
So smaller.
They'll be smaller.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Any questions?
Yeah, Adam, you quoted the master plan several times, and you even put up the quote, seniors who want to downsize can't, young families who want to buy a first home can't. Respondents to the 2021 Enfield Community Survey identified the availability and affordability as our community's most serious problem. Do you think the seniors and the young families can afford $500,000?
I think that there's a set that can. I'm not going to say that this is going to be an attainably priced home for everyone to be able to buy. I think that's an unrealistic goal in this market for this being kind of the first community that we are trying to build. But I do think there's a number of people in Enfield and the surrounding communities that are in much larger homes they don't want to continue taking care of. Maybe they had kids that went away to school and are out in the world, and they want a smaller, easier to maintain home, but they have significant equity in their existing homes. And I think that these homes will provide a great alternative for those individuals. We've also had good advanced conversations with some of the team at, for example, Dartmouth Health and the relocation specialist there, as well as local lenders, on how we can not only kind of partner with the employers, but also partner with local lenders that are members of the community to offer things like rate buy downs that'll, not just look at the actual, call it sales price of the home, but the monthly payment that someone can afford, and ways that we can pull levers that other people might not be looking at, like rate buy downs, to make the monthly payment more affordable.
Okay. So about 3 months ago, the town had an election and a vote, and the people of the town decided that they didn't want the changes to zoning. The master plan was done 3 years ago. This vote happened 3 months ago. How should we take that into consideration?
I'd be foolish if I tried to tell you exactly how you should take it. I do think that the suggestions and then the updated zoning were far more encompassing than just the R1 village district. So we're looking at kind of one fairly unique parcel in the Enfield Village area, not some of the more sweeping changes that were going to impact other areas. Like I know having in the kind of Enfield downtown district, there were a lot more changes. In the kind of changes to Route 4, there were pretty significant changes. And so I guess the case I would make is I'm working to comply with all the other elements of what is required under the zoning ordinance and the dimensional requirements, the setbacks. It's really just this one part of the ordinance that I'm unable to comply with and develop something that is in compliance with the master plan. And so it's a great question, and one I've certainly pondered, and I do think, though, that the larger scope of the full rezoning is maybe greater than just the individual area that I'm looking at.
Okay, thank you. Switching gears a bit, criteria for the value of surrounding properties would not be diminished. Vanessa Stone gave an opinion. Vanessa Stone is wonderful. She is a gem to this community and somebody that I personally have worked with. If I were applying for a mortgage, however, the bank would require me to go to an appraiser. Why did you choose to go to a real estate agent, not an appraiser?
Based in some ways on the input from legal counsel on where they thought the kind of local experience might lie. I did speak with several appraisers, and I think they kind of a mix of some of them of looking at, you can look at the numbers and do it based off of that, and their process is, what do I think I'm going to sell them for? What is the average per square foot sales price in this area? There's very few sales in this area, so there's not a lot of actual hard data to pull from. But the ones I talked with conversationally, and again, I have no letter to put in front of you, it indicated that it'd be the same opinion, but we felt that having someone that really knows the area would be a helpful opinion to provide, and someone who's done, I think, the most up-to-date transactions in this neighborhood.
All right. So my personal preference, and I'm not speaking for the board here, Mr. Chairman, but my personal preference would be that you use a local licensed appraiser.
Okay.
Not somebody from Manchester, not somebody that maybe a developer would use over and over again, but somebody local, independent. I remain neutral in this whole thing, but seeing that data would help me with that criteria 4.
Okay.
So I have several other questions, but I don't know.
Yeah, if I could just interject. Do you think that the impact on housing values might be more significant if this variance weren't granted and you were forced to put in larger homes and a larger street?
I would say, for example, one thing that I would not need a variance to do is build a 60-unit condo building on this site, and I think that might fundamentally change the character of the neighborhood. For example, perhaps in the negative, and that by granting you this variance, we're offering a path to development that's more enhancing of the character of the neighborhood and more supportive of the local property values surrounding it. I think that really any development of the character of the neighborhood, a lot of research has been shown that kind of development like this tends to actually elevate neighborhoods. When you're investing new money in a community in an area that hasn't seen much new construction in a while, you tend to actually lift the entire neighborhood with you. But I can certainly provide additional opinions if that's helpful.
Thank you. All right, can I give Celia a chance if she has any questions? Do you have any questions, Celia?
I have, not questions, I have comments about, is that all right? Because,
Maybe we want to say that for discussion period. I think what we're trying to do is maximize Adam's time here and ask him direct questions about the proposal. But we'll have plenty of time to discuss after.
okay.
Okay.
I just have one question.
Oh, yeah, Kyle.
Are any of these planned to be rental properties at all? Specifically looking at the multifamily unit in the front?
The intent is to offer them all for sale. And I don't want to say maybe that can change, but we don't think that the market is supporting of renting these based on how much it'll cost to build them. We think that there's a better market for sale homes in this location, and I mean, that's what we want to do, is offer them for sale.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dan, you said you had more questions?
I do. So on page 1 of the applicant packet, it says future land use map districts, master plan, Village A is referenced. Can you explain this? Can you tell me the relevance there? I missed,
Yeah.
I'm not that bright.
And what I was really seeking out is in the Enfield master plan, the description of what the town wants to see, the future land use it hopes to see, is broken up into these future land use areas on this map. And so I went to the map area, identified my parcel on the map, and mapped it down to what was called the Enfield Village area for the future land use. So that's where we really started in our site planning, is looking at what does the master plan say it wants in this site based on the district we are in. And that district is the Enfield Village district of this map that guides the master plan.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. And you mentioned that the variance will not, criteria one says the variance will not be contrary to public interest. You say, with housing density fully compliant within the zoning ordinance. So I assume that you're referring to paragraph K, where it says you can have, if you have water and sewer, you can have one house for each quarter acre. When you do your calculation, you say you have 16.4 acres now, but you have significant wetlands and setback requirements that are unusual because of the cemetery. How many acres are you actually using in your calculation?
I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, like maybe the wetlands taking up like an acre or two, but let's say we're basically building in this proposal to maybe not quite half of the density that calculation would yield, but we've left a pretty good kind of margin for error there in terms of what we're proposing to build.
8 acres that are developable?
I'd say far more. I mean,
Far more.
14, I'm guessing, and sorry, this is just me kind of coming up with numbers, but that's just.
All right. So Adam, one of the things we usually see in applications is more detailed maps, like with the wetlands, with the setbacks and those sorts of things. And they weren't in here. I was a bit surprised. Is that a conscious decision?
No, and I'd be happy to provide those. Some of that was the timeline as we were putting some of this together and getting our surveys back. The last few pages here are a more detailed version. Perfect, thank you, I appreciate the help. It does show kind of a more of a blown up version that includes the setback requirements, that includes the flagged wetlands that we have in there. In some of the areas on the site includes a little bit of topographical information. And so I believe it's the last 2 pages that are just a kind of larger printout of each of the phases.
Okay, you do say in the application that the site contains wetland systems, both of which mandate significant legal and environmental setbacks. I'm going to need more quantitative information there. And I know I'm not the planning board, not trying to be the planning board, but by the same token, wetlands are important to everybody in this
Yes.
town. And I just think we're going to need more information there. Unless you want to elaborate on it now, but I doubt you're going to be able to get me over the line.
No, I'd be happy to offer a little more guidance. So we did hire a licensed wetland scientist to come out and do test sampling of soils conditions around the site to flag the wetlands. That was all done in advance of our updated survey.
Yeah.
I'll also say that it was done at perhaps the wettest period of time of the year. And so, we weren't trying to hide anything. This was, I don't know, like she was actually a little annoyed at me that I was pulling her out so early as the snow's thawed. So she flagged all the sites. She has a full kind of values and uses of these wetlands, how they contribute to the overall ecosystem of this area. That is incredibly relevant for our wetland permitting that we'll have to do. And we do have all of that.
Okay. If it would be something the chair would want to do, would you be comfortable with a site visit? I've driven by the site, but I haven't gotten onto the site because it's private property. And it's, to your point, it's pretty cookie cutter, if you will.
So maybe this is in anticipation of the special exception that's related to the wetlands? Is that what you're thinking?
No, I think some of the criteria that we have to answer would benefit from having visited the site and understanding the site a little bit better.
Okay.
But I believe that's you. Have you reviewed the Mascoma Watershed Management Plan that was done and completed 3 months ago?
I've not fully reviewed that, no.
That might be worthwhile because you're a key property within the watershed for Lake Mascoma, which is very important to us, and the health of that. So it's worthwhile to take a look at that.
And I will absolutely take a look at that. I will say that as a part of this development, we'll be required to, have a professional and engineered stormwater management system. And so the end result of our development will probably be a much better managed stormwater and kind of stewardship of the watershed than is there today. Today, there's just, it is what it is. At different times in history, there's been, like excavators that have come through and just done whatever to the wetland area. We're trying to approach this in a responsible way. And so our post-development stormwater management should be much more robust than what is in place today.
And I appreciate that. And I think you're sincere in everything that you're telling us. However, as a board and as a member of that board, the first criteria is the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. If I'm not confident that we're not going to protect that lake and do a number of other things, I'm not going to be comfortable. So more information is going to be beneficial to me, and I'm not speaking for everybody, just myself. So I guess I will yield for now and turn it back to the chair.
Does the board have any other further questions?
I have a comment. Sergeant Street goes up a hill, and this all goes up a hill, and the drainage is going to come down through your development and into the lake. And there isn't any way to avoid that because of the geography. And the cemetery's up on a hill.
And we're going to have a real problem.
Yeah. Well, in my old house, the water comes down the hill through the cellar, out a drain, and into the Mascoma River. And that's the way that there isn't anything to stop it because I'm at the foot of a hill.
Yeah.
So that, when you're talking about protecting the lake, it is a real concern.
It is.
Because there's gonna be a lot of water coming down there. And I think everybody in town knows that because of the geography of the village.
So
Also, the clear cutting of the forest that you talked about would add more water
it would.
to come down, and that would not be in the best interest of
Yeah.
So right now,
the houses that are down below them.
if it's helpful at the moment, the wetland system that is on the site, and sorry as I flip back to it, what you can see in the kind of bottom of this image is all of the water that kind of the wet soils conditions, and in some cases seasonally actual runoff of water, it all flows into a town storm grate right on the edge of Main Street and funnels under the road. So that's, things just naturally flow unimpeded through there. Through the development of the site, we'll be introducing more rigorous actual like active stormwater management that would require the treatment of stormwater and the retention of stormwater. And so it's, instead of it being, hey, whatever happens, happens, we'd be responsible for actually actively managing runoff. And that's something that doesn't exist today, and I think actually a general net contributor to protecting the watershed long term.
How many acres are you gonna cut in forest?
We're trying to minimize much of the site plan is designed to kind of minimize that impact, and the real homes most of the homes we're developing here are clustered in areas that are open field today. So I don't have an exact count of, hey, here's how many trees we're going to take down.
If they did a typical grid development, there'd have to be a lot of clearing.
Yeah, in this site plan, we'd be
the way
taking down
these
a
are.
few trees, but trying to minimize it. In a traditional subdivision, if we don't get this variance, it would necessitate kind of wide clear cutting of the trees here, and that's exactly what we don't want to do.
Well, and it looks on that big map like you're keeping the development out of a lot of the trees.
Exactly.
That's south of where your development is? Where,
Yeah, and I can highlight.
here,
Yes, so that's a little
and
bit
that's
to the
not
west.
the whole piece. Right?
Yes, our intent is to leave that untouched and, likely to put that under a conservation easement for long-term management.
And there are a lot of trees up there?
There's a lot of great
There
trees up
are,
there.
actually.
Yes, and that's why we don't want to touch them.
There will be some cutting for the phase 3 portion, it looks like. but-
There will be. Yeah, don't want to try and hide behind that. We would have some limited, but and again, there's nothing I can kind of guarantee you today, but like our approach here has been to try to put development where we're not knocking down trees during our surveying, we mapped where the mature trees on the site were to avoid them. So we're trying to do a lot. We think actually that the mature trees are a beautiful part of this site and what makes it special. And so we want to minimize impacts as we can.
One of the most, what hasn't been mentioned in the master plan and housing, and over again, that it wants to protect the forest and the fields and our rural character, and that's what this is. So in your development, your intention is just to go up where you and cut trees and actually cover all the land that's available down below, which takes away any use of any farming or whatever that they do with their individual lots down there. But did you think about that when you were looking at that, how you could do the both?
Yeah, and so as a part of our site plan, we've actually included a community farming area. Right now, today, like that is used as a farm plot for growing of vegetables and flowers, and that's really the heart of this community. The homes cluster on either side around it, but it's right in the middle, so people have access to it. There's a great couple that lives here in Enfield. Right now, they're farming the site. They keep bees on the site. If you're familiar with the little kind of bee near Lakeside Park, you can buy like jars of honey in this yellow box near Lakeside Park. That honey comes from this site today. And so the area that they're farming and doing all of a sudden, we've wanted to keep just as it is. The rest of the site today is not being actively farmed, hasn't been farmed in quite some time.
Thank you, Adam. I think it's time to move to the questions of the abutters. Do you have any comments? Okay. Please say your name and your address for the record.
Okay. My name is Nicole Lovejoy. I live at 120 Main Street. If you look at this map, it's in here. This land up to the cemetery.
Okay.
I've contacted a number of the other abutters and we've had conversations and whatnot. So my understanding is that the zoning board uses this evaluation of the 5 criteria to determine whether or not a variance will be granted. So I went through each individual criteria. Criteria 1 is the variance will not be contrary to public opinion. The density of this project that was initially pitched at the planning board in March had 19 units. Now it's grown to 39 units with the addition of this additional plot of land. Currently, there are 12 residential abutters in the Oak Grove Cemetery. That would mean that for every current home would have 3.25 new homes being erected on 3 parcels of land that currently have 2 residential homes. The current water study, even incorporating in Laramie Farms, shows that the remainder after Laramie Farms is 114,463 gallons a day. With the addition of these 39 units, stretch that to a dangerous point. Last year when we had the drought, the town actually requested that we conserve water. So, that's a concern. The only defined entrance and exit to this complex is by expanding the current home driveway to a two-lane road for the 39 units. The traffic study, of course, is a concern considering that one end of Main Street has a one-lane underpass that goes to Shaker Hill. So, you're gonna have a lot of extra traffic. The drawing shows a gated connection up to Esty Lane, and that's a private road. So there's implications as to what is gonna happen with the folks that are on Esty Lane and their road. The lighting plan obviously is an issue. What's gonna happen with our night line. The impact to the wetlands is very concerning, with the solution to the developer that you'd get a special exception to build across the wetlands. What would trash removal entail? Are we talking big dumpsters, or are we talking 78 barrels lined up along Main Street? I believe that this shows that this is contrary to the public interest. Criteria 2, the spirit of the ordinance is observed. The R1 district has a one principal building per lot rule. The zoning amendment that was on the March ballot was voted down by the town people. This is the spirit of the ordinance that we should apply. The applicant addresses consistent with the character of the historic village, yet according to the master plan, the average residential lot size per home is much greater than these units will have. The proposal shows a combined 16.42 acre parcel. The proposal states that 50% of that's going to remain green. Therefore, each unit would average at 0.21 acres per unit. In the master plan, the smallest acreage in Enfield is Prospect Pines, which is an apartment group, and they have 0.23 acres per unit, making this the smallest per unit acreage in all of Enfield. I believe that this shows that the project does not observe the spirit of the ordinance. Criterion 3, granting the variance would do substantial justice, loss to the applicant versus gain to the general public. The applicant has stated that the current use is not developed to anything approaching its highest and best use. Who decides what the highest and best use of the property should be? The abutters would agree that the fields of the old dairy farm being free of additional buildings with the wildlife roaming across it is indeed the highest and best use. The applicant says they are not putting in a subdivision which would require that the property be broken into individual units, but instead it's a condominium complex that has all the appearances of being a subdivision without calling it that. They say the parcel was only recently subdivided into multiple tax parcels. The trailer house were subdivided in 1960 when the grandparents that lived in the house moved into the trailer and the daughter and family moved into the house with their children. I don't see that in any way, shape, or form as a recent subdivision of the property. The applicant says no neighboring property is harmed by the proposed development and that it's a thoughtful design pocket neighborhood. I believe that building a neighborhood on a property with two existing homes, which requires a variance to build, is far from a thoughtful design. I believe this shows that the gain to the general public is not met based on the proposal submitted. Criteria 4, the value of surrounding properties would not be diminished. My home, as I said, is at 120 Main Street, built in 1855, which my family has owned for over 100 years. I am now the fourth generation to reside here. The proposed drawing shows roadways and driveways coming very close to the property line, one right at my back door. They've got the loss of spring runoff ground due to the new home could very well alter the runoff flow so that instead it comes through my upper field, which causes possible flooding in my cellar where none has ever existed before. I see these factors diminishing to my property value. I did have another realtor, not Vanessa Stone, tell me that if the roadways come up to my property line, indeed it does diminish my property value. Now, you know, it wasn't an appraiser, it was just word of mouth from somebody that said, you know, if driveways are right there, it's absolutely gonna impact your property value. The view from Oak Grove Cemetery is again being diminished and will impact their values. But I'll let the cemetery folks talk about that. The applicant says the proposed development will support and stabilize the value of surrounding properties. When did stability in this area become an issue? My property valuations have consistently increased with every new town reevaluation period. The applicant points to the active commercial trucking and storage uses. The business predated the institution of zoning ordinances and was grandfathered in. No additional businesses have gone into that area since zoning ordinances went into effect. I believe this shows that the value to surrounding property will be diminished. Criteria 5, literal enforcement would result in unnecessary hardship. The applicant discussed the special conditions distinguishing this property to say that this would justify their request. The property has been sold twice since the original family that I knew. It does not constitute a hardship if you purchase the property with the sole intent of developing while knowing that the zoning ordinances would not allow it without a variance. This would be an issue that would have to be taken up with the previous owner who bought it from the original family and also attempted to develop on the property and was not granted the variance to do it because of the diminished value to the Oak Grove Cemetery sales. The applicant discusses site constraints that include environmental setbacks, but has said they will get a wetland special exception to allow them to build roads or other items. According to the state DES Land Resource Management, if someone wished to dredge or fill a jurisdictional wetland in the state of New Hampshire, a state wetlands permit would be required. The applicant gives the farm history and with additional agricultural outbuildings that have long since been removed. Again, it was a dairy farm that ceased operations long ago. I do not believe that claiming unnecessary hardship is justified when the property was purchased to build against the R1 zoning ordinances. And a few additional notes that I've written is there are many references to the Enfield Master Plan. The project says that it will preserve the majority of the track as open space. That's not what I see when I look at this map. The applicant says the master plan calls for smaller units in walkable neighborhoods in the location of this property. I've reviewed the master plan and have not found that wording that says this area is supposed to be developed. The Enfield master plan spends a lot of time talking about affordable housing to draw the workforce into the Enfield area. The mean price of affordable housing, according to the master plan, is much less than the predicted sales price of these units. According to what was presented at the planning board, these units will be 1,000 to 1,500 square feet and priced around $500,000. The proposed plan does not address if the homes will be built on slabs or cellars. How would this impact spring runoff, water drainage, and frost heaves? The Heritage Commission were not asked to weigh in because the historic district is outside the original, outside of this original area. And the Conservation Committee does not assess this plan as part of the request for variance, but will have to supply input if the project returns to the planning board. None of the abutters that I talked with see the project as acceptable to the intent of the master plan or deserving of variance to the R1 zoning ordinances that are in place now.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a point of order? I just want to be cognizant that we are at 8 o'clock and under our rules, we stop at 10. There is a hard stop, so I appreciate that people have things to say, but there's a lot of people in the room, so people would just be cognizant of
Yeah.
behind.
There are butters.
I do appreciate that.
I think Nicole is speaking for a lot of us. She's prepared.
Is it appropriate to give Adam a chance to rebut? I mean, that was basically a letter.
No,
No, you need to
let
get,
them do their.
Okay, you're
you
right.
need to let.
All right, thank you for your contribution. Do we have input from other butters? Yes, please state your name and address.
Okay. I'm Pat Paradis. I live at 108 Main Street. I've lived there 61 years. My home was built in 1852, and I've been a member of the Cemetery Association for about 40 years. We're very concerned that this might turn into a recreational area for your project. Sliding for the children. They don't realize we have to pay a liability insurance for injuries, etc. And what would be our protection from people trespassing into the cemetery?
Would you like me to respond? I want to follow.
I mean, maybe at one point, yeah, sure.
Would love to talk to you about how we can accomplish making it so people aren't trespassing.
It's
I think
sacred
it's a
ground,
really-
and
yes.
many people from far away come back here to be buried. It was established in 1852 by order of the state.
It's a beautiful and very well cared for cemetery. And
Thank
I'd
you,
love
and it
to
costs a
see if
lot
we
of
can-
money.
Yes.
I think some fencing and signage would be,
Absolutely. I will say, right now, as it stands, and as I purchased the property, much of the fence line along the boundary has fallen over, has kind of fallen into disrepair. So if anything, this investment will allow us to better protect that boundary line.
Bill, one more point of order. When someone is speaking and people in the audience are speaking, we can't hear them. This room is terrible for acoustics, so we really can't hear, even when Celie's talking and people were talking. I couldn't hear her, and it's the room we're stuck with, but it's just, I want to be able to hear what people say, that's all.
Maybe people in the audience could stand up when they speak. That would help.
I gotta do this all over again?
No. It's a terrible room for acoustics.
thanks, Tim. So we'll speak up. Yes.
Yes, loud is good.
I'm Karen Doran. I live at 16 SD Lane. I've lived there for 40 years or some. And I abut Nikki's plant lot there. And what I don't understand is Doug Allard used to own the land, and they told him he couldn't build because of the wetlands, and there was only so much allowed, and the runoff from David's septic coming down. That's why my garden grows so well. But, you know, it doesn't seem like there's enough room there. And you were going to do 19 units, and now you're going to do all these extra ones, like 38, I think. 39. And how many are going to go in that lot? Is it like 8?
I think as we drew, we have.
Can you show me,
yes.
I'm confused. Where am I? Am I here?
Yes.
Because this is Nikki's, right?
Correct.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and half of the rest of them. 12, 13, 14. How are you going to squeeze all that in that little piece of land?
That'll be, certainly a part of that final site planning process we'll go through is making sure the site feels comfortable there, that we're, managing things like the stormwater runoff and any wet conditions.
That is going to be a big issue. And the wildlife, now I put up fences. Someone told me it doesn't do any good because you have deer that have a route from up in behind your house down to the frog pond. I said, oh, pshaw. I put up a fence. They knocked it down.
Yeah, right on
And
our land.
every time, I finally gave up, and I have deers that come in and sleep in my backyard now. And I have wild turkeys that come down, but they mean a lot to us. The sky at night means a lot to us. I can look and still see stars. How rare is that in downtown areas, you know?
Got the bears.
I mean, I grew up in a city, I know what it's like. And what I'm concerned about is with this number of buildings per lot, urban sprawl. Because if the board says, okay to you, that's the precedent set. Then the next guy coming in, there's a little more acreage sitting there. Okay, he got it, so I want it too. Next thing you've got house after house after house. You're sitting on your john and you're watching the guy shower next to you. And I'll tell you, in my hometown, there have been houses, beautiful houses, beautiful green spaces, put up where I used to ice skate, you know, through these ponds. They are so close together. You can actually see in their dining rooms. You can see there's no sense of privacy. And some of them felt fine, they don't care. But how did we get from 19 to 38? Is it just because you acquired that land from Nikki?
Having additional land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Thank
I don't know. I think that land is dangerous to build on, period. And the runoff from there, with the wetlands, I have a feeling it's gonna come right down through our property. That road gets washed out all the time, and we have to pay big bucks to keep it maintained. Now, there was mention in here of a gate. And the gate is supposed to, I guess you guys are gonna put it in so your people can't use the right of way, is that right? Well,
Sorry, the gate would be to prevent people from going down SE Lane.
Right.
Prevent residents from driving down past your home.
It's emergency access, right?
Correct.
Is the purpose of it? For
Yeah.
fire,
Right,
fire
it's-
and rescue.
I remember David coming across the field when Bill was sick. And boy, I've never seen that lights come so fast through that field. I'm just concerned that,
Yeah, the rescue teams would have an access key to the gate. I think
Yeah.
it's
And we
standard
would certainly
practice.
provide access to other right-of-way holders as well. But yeah, the purpose of that is to prevent people from driving past your home that live here, to minimize your impact.
right, now, they do mention though in this plan that there would be, that you'd have access with trucks coming up during the development, right?
I mean, our intent would be to have construction trucks coming up through our site, not going past your homes.
At all?
That would be our intent.
Because
yeah.
there's also mention that you'll help maintain our road
It's a requirement of the
if
deed.
you use it.
Yeah.
So when you say something like that, it tells me you're gonna use it.
So our intent, the reason behind the gate is purely for kind of emergency safety. Should it be required by the fire department. Our intent is not to have a road that experiences an uptick in traffic as a result of this being here.
Yeah, but construction vehicles
It
are
would
heavy.
be temporary, even if,
Well, even still, I mean, they're going to damage the road. I
Yeah.
mean, and the runoff coming down off that hill, there goes the road again.
Yep. And I'll
And
also-
where is the board's head? I mean, for God's sake, you would not allow someone to put 2 houses on a lot. Now you want to put 8 or 12. What the hell? I know the town needs money, but God,
That has
there's a
nothing
lot
to
of
do with
open
it.
space
The
in
town
other
needing money
places.
has nothing to do with this application. And I frankly don't think it's appropriate to make that inference that the board would be influenced by that. So please don't make statements like that.
Well, I
let's-
really believe that. So I will make that statement.
okay, let's not
But
get
all right, I
hostile
won't
here.
go
Let's
into
keep
it,
this
but I'm just
civil.
saying,
Let's just
you
keep
know,
this
this
civil.
has to be looked at very carefully.
Okay, thank you, that's why we're here. All right, the gentleman in the back has been very patient.
David Gray, a butter up in the left-hand corner, across the field. Years ago, Mr. Estes that owned all that property, had a chance to have a couple sales of that whole property, and Estes Lane, number one, was not wide enough. The town requires more than a 25-foot right-of-way. He had another 25-foot right-of-way down Main Street a short distance, and they were talking about maybe an in and an out. The town wouldn't accept it, so he lost the sales of the field of that property. Said that no more. Well, Mrs. Estes, Giselle here, still in the daughters here, they still own the property up behind in the woods. And so Estes Lane, other than the abutters or the landowners on Estes Lane, Mrs. Estes and her family and my wife and I have a deeded right of way up Estes Lane, just our home. My parents bought the property off from Sergeant Street, so that got us in without having to go across. So if they use Estes Lane and gate it, that is preventing the Estes and us to use the field for any purpose. We have a right of way to travel in that portion. So therefore that 25 feet of the field, and to be able to, as the residents on the road say, use it and gate it. No, that you're gating it, then we can't use it if we want to go up through there, number one. Number two, you say that there's not, excuse me, you say that there's not many trees that are going to be cut, and whether it's in the proposal now or in the future, but my home, and this is my back garage, this is all wooded land from here, this is all woods, all the way up through. And down in this area where the wetlands comes through and runs down through by Mrs. Estes land and this land, there's a culvert here. And when the water runs now, it runs over the street.
Yep.
At certain times of the year, the road is flooded right there on Main Street
And
by the
dumpster
fire
on
hydrant. So just the information that I have with it. And but this is my, this would actually be my front lawn, from the edge of my front lawn at my home to this parcel here. I cannot believe that I've been taking care of that property for many years, haying it, and the last few years, brush hogging it for Nikki, and the farm tractor in there with the brush hog, or my cutter bar, the farmer had to give up because it was so wet in the field right here. And other than runoff down through there, that's what gets there. So if any of you want to come and visit, come up to my home and take a look at everything from my land, you're welcome to.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. Yes, please state your name.
Cindy Wells, I live on SD Lane, and so with this project, it looks like you would be removing the lot lines for the 3 lots and making it into 1 lot, correct?
Is that true?
That would be planning board that would do that.
Yeah, that's something we bring to the planning board. We may do lot line adjustments. We don't necessarily need to, in the iteration shown here, fully remove lot lines, but we may do some lot line adjustments on the owned property, yes.
Okay, oh, it's not a requirement because you're merging it or annexing it.
Yeah, and so that could be, I believe, and this would be with the planning board, that could be done as a lot line adjustment rather than a subdivision of land from Nikki's lot. But that's certainly something we bring up to make sure we're doing appropriately with the planning board.
Okay, and then the road from SD Lane to the development, that would be considered a driveway?
Again, maybe, is it okay if I hit on a couple of things I think have been common topics, or is it?
I think this question is relevant, right? It seems like.
Well, it's relevant because zoning ordinance on page 93 says, street giving access to the lot. The street giving access to the lot means a street abutting the lot and upon which the lot has frontage. The development doesn't have frontage on SD Lane.
So in this case, I think I'm not sure exactly what the technical definition of the access point would be. The point of that access is purely from our perspective for emergency access. It's not something we intend to see used regularly, and would love to have conversations with the right-of-way holders about how we can maintain access while also preventing the behaviors others don't want, like having residents driving past their homes or construction trucks driving past their homes. And so I can come back to you if it helps. And
well, I guess if the zoning ordinance is the authority, and now, well, we might be able to do this here, but the authority says, no, you don't have frontage, period. That seems like end of topic. So when the relief you're looking for in section U, it says no lot shall have more than one principal building. That seems like a very simple way around what's actually going on this land. And to me, if you look at the Enfield zoning ordinance appendix A, land use definitions, this looks like a cluster development. And that's a residential subdivision of a parcel of land tract of at least 10 acres, where instead of subdividing the entire tract into house lots of conventional size, a similar number of single dwelling unit dwellings may be clustered on lots of reduced dimensions. The remaining land on the tract, which has not been built upon, is reserved in perpetuity for open space. So the permitted uses and mix of cluster development shall be restricted to single dwelling unit dwellings. And under the zoning of 401.5 of cluster development is permitted in C1. This is R1 we're talking about. So, Appendix A on land use definitions, page 85. Condominium shall mean multi-family group or clustered housing wherein housing units are individually owned, but wherein open space and group facilities are held in common ownership. Condominiums shall be considered a subdivision of land as outlined in RSA 356-B and defined in RSA 672:14 and reviewed accordingly. So the subdivision shall mean the altering, whether by adding, moving, or removing the lines between 3 or more adjacent lots, tracts, or parcels of land without increasing the number of parcels of lots. It shall be subject to the application requirements of major subdivision. And Town of Enfield subdivision regulations, page 12. All lots shall conform with the existing Enfield zoning ordinance, or the board shall not approve it as a building lot. And the application refers to the master plan. So I read the master plan, and I would like to bring light on things that I drew from the master plan. Page 18, residential property in most areas of Enfield is developed at a low to very low density. The average residential lot size is about 5 acres. Many residential properties in the rural areas of town could be further developed under current zoning requirements. However, in the village areas where there is supporting infrastructure, residential property is substantially built out under current zoning. Master plan, page 20. Under the heading current zoning and build out residential 1 zoning districts serviced by water and sewer, the serviced portion of those districts currently allows only 2 dwelling units to the acre, while the Route 4 district allows up to 12. So that was compared. Master plan, page 20, heading perspectives and priorities. Most respondents expressed satisfaction with how their land is currently zoned. Enfield residents do not feel that property owners have a right to develop and use their land however they want. They do feel that neighbors' concerns about development should be considered. Master plan, page 22. We envision growth and new construction in Enfield Village, but that should be balanced with preservation of significant buildings and respect for the scale and pattern of our historic village. The proposal of Woodbury Farm is for 38 residential units on approximately 8 acres of land. Condominiums are considered a subdivision. Where is there a pattern of that scale in Enfield Village? The master plan is a vision on the foreseeable growth of Enfield. If growth is to be developed with a plan, I believe the zoning should be adjusted first to allow for the master plan vision. If the intention is to approve the variances on a piecemeal basis, then that has potential to distort the master plan. I find there to be discrepancies between the zoning in effect, interpreting the master plan, and the variance of application. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes?
Hi, Larry Leonard. Adam, just a couple of quick things. So one, what is your understanding for the cemetery setback? Do you have an exact number for that?
It's 25 feet.
So it's standard 25 feet. And the other question, I'd like to take up on your offer to meet with our board, or at least a few of us.
Yes, I would love to.
Okay, we'll get together and do this.
My email address is in the zoning variance application. If you wanted to reach out to me, I'm available and love to sit down.
Okay.
Giselle Estate, I'm about that new piece of land you're talking about. And on here where it's proposed community,
I'm sorry, but
emergency
I
access.
can't hear you.
Could you speak up, please, ma'am?
My house is right here, and I also that field there where all those houses, it looks flat, it looks nice, but all the one out come down in my field before it make its way back to the culvert. So with all these houses, this work up there, how much water is gonna come down? And another thing, well, the access, how do you plan on using escalating for emergency road?
It's one of the, again, this is not a final site plan, so it's a,
Because it's a private road.
It
We
is.
have, all of us, the six that live on that, have to open it and take care of it. So why all of a sudden the neighbors come in and build it, they can use it?
I would love to have a conversation with you about that. And there is an alternative. I mean, we have areas for fire trucks to turn around in the site as it is without having a secondary access point for emergencies only. There's a small strip of land that you own that would allow us to exit onto Sargent Street instead, in which case there's nothing that would need to go past here on any private lane. But the right-of-way that exists today goes almost exactly to Sargent Lane, but legally does not connect to Sargent Lane. So there's,
Okay. Okay. Do you have another question?
Okay, that property does not have any way to get onto Sergeant Street. Sergeant Street dead ends at my business truck garage. And from there to my home is a private drive. Their property comes up, they own the land to my driveway, but they do not, that does not turn onto Sergeant Street. Sergeant Street is private.
We share in our deeds.
And
And Giselle has access.
Nicole owns the strip of land, 25 feet up across the field to my lot, between what was my parents' land and my land, and that's where it stops. Mrs. Estes has the right of way into the woods from that point. From that point down across the field, the two of us have the right of way that has to be, or should be kept open. So as far as any gating, and as far as anything on the cemetery side, thinking about putting fences up is crazy, and whether it's this board or another board, people that have bought lots in that cemetery have bought it, not to look at houses, they bought it to have the view, to look at the lake and so forth. And it's been a lot of families, generations that have got property up there, so. That's all I got to say tonight.
Thank you. Rob, all right, one more?
Jim Burns, 14 to Sea Lane. We're right on top of that land. Has that land been sold actually by Nikki?
It's
pending?
It's under what's called an option agreement, so we have a right to purchase it.
Okay, because before the previous owner was not allowed to. And Essie Lane is private, only authorized by the 6 residents on it to use it, except for what we allow, maintenance trucks, etc. So if you open that road, what do you plan on doing to the road?
That's something I'd love to discuss with the folks that use SC Lane. And again, as shown, it's just a kind of proposed concept. Really for the purposes of the variance, we were trying to illustrate where the locations of homes would be, and some of the final site circulation would be a part of our.
There's 14 to 17 homes that would have access to our road, which an average of maybe 2 cars per household running up and down our road.
And that's.
Right now, it's private. You all can't, the town cannot even set orders for it. They could do it for other roads, but they cannot do a private road. They cannot tell us what to do with it. We maintain it. The water is horrible, for instance. And
He buys the land, does he have access to it?
Yeah, not to our road, it's private.
No, that's a right of way up through there.
Right away.
Well, he'd have right away.
Right away for emergencies.
He'd have the right away to Nikki's lot, but
You don't have it coming out.
back, but not,
It's used for
not
emergencies.
making a whole loop and everything else. And
Right away
and-
is for
and the
emergencies.
town didn't want to allow it years ago to build this, they even talked about building the school, buying the property to build the school. And they wouldn't allow the 25-foot use, and now you got 8 houses in there that you think more cars are gonna come down Estes Lane?
Okay.
That shouldn't happen.
I think we made the point that Estes Lane is private. I think that's very clear, and that will be taken into consideration if this goes forward. Do you have any other concerns?
Well, if they do be allowed to overtake our, private road.
No, I don't think anyone's
What are you
suggesting
going
that.
to do to the road?
It's not our intent to overtake the private road at all. And as drawn in, what we actually have is measures to prevent residents from using your private road.
Okay, because you cannot build a 2-lane in there. You're gonna
Agreed.
cut it, you're gonna cut into personal property, you're gonna
It's-
destroy
yeah.
trees, telephone poles that come out. You'll hit my fences and tear it down.
Sharon Brophy has a.
It's not my road, absolutely. One other thing I would maybe share is, as a part of our site development and next steps, we have to go and do a soil survey across the entire site. We examine all the soils conditions, and that becomes a part of our stormwater management system, so that after the development's done, we will actually be more actively managing water runoff that is maybe causing challenges for you today. So the stormwater runoff should be better after we finish than it is today.
Does that include a perk test?
So Kim from our engineering team is here, and she's helping us on the site design. Her team member, it's her daughter's birthday tonight, so Kim is here representing in her shoes for her and her partner. I don't know on the, technically, I mean, with perk testing is more what you use for septic, but.
Yeah, we would definitely do infiltration tests though, which would be for stormwater purposes. And then also knowing where the groundwater level is and just knowing what kind of soil there is, that would also tell us what the approximate infiltration rate of the soil is. So we'll know exactly where the groundwater table is and what type of soil it is, and that's what we'll use to design the stormwater system for the site. Thank you.
Okay.
Sharon Brophy had her hand.
Yeah, but
No, I'm not in the butter. I have a, more of a question for this gentleman about the design, but I want to let the butters speak first.
thank you, Sharon. Are we in a butter?
Yes, I'm Lisa Esty. I'm with Giselle Esty at 2 Esty Lane. I'm not going to talk about Esty Lane, but one of the concerns that I have is that we currently have a neighborhood and a community in the southern part of Main Street. You're bringing in a whole new community. How is that going to interact with the rest of us? And the houses that you're bringing in, they're 500,000. What are the houses around that? They're not valued at that, or there aren't many that are valued at that. And in terms of the tax, there's been a lot of talk. Vanessa Stone said, oh yeah, it's not going to hurt your property. In fact, it's going to increase your value. And what's that going to do for the folks who are living outside of that community and the taxes that we're now going to have to pay to support our small homes in our existing community? So any comments on how you're going to kind of integrate into the pre-existing community?
Well, I would share that the development is intentionally broken up into several phases. So it's not overnight going to be, a bunch of new neighbors living nearby. It'll be incremental and over time as it gets built out. So it won't be a flood of people. And I think that assists with the integration. I think it would also be lovely to provide access to some of the things that we have in the community to residents that live nearby and create a place that's more cohesive from all parties. I'm not well equipped to speak to a concern about the property values going up too much around for the variance largely driven by not wanting to diminish property values. So I'm not well equipped to make a case one way or the other on how that might impact the taxable value of the parcels.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions online about butters?
Not seeing any.
Okay.
I think Mrs. Lowell was gonna send in something.
She did, thank you for mentioning it. I was gonna say, we did receive this, everybody
Yeah.
got a copy of it.
I think the points have mostly been,
Can we, yeah, I just say, can we, I just want, for the record, we're adopting this as a received statement from her. so.
Can we hear?
in the interest of time, I'm just going to summarize. She says, we agree with the remarks of Cindy Wells, Gay and Tim Burns, and Nicole Lovejoy about the variance. Then she says the Estes Lane is a private road. She asks if it'll be upgraded. Again, we've discussed that. Then she asked about runoff. The maintenance is currently falls on the homeowners of Estes Lane, and she's concerned that that will become worse with this development. But I think that we've discussed that. The logging is kind of shown on the plan, but yeah. So I think everything has been mentioned. Would you guys agree, for the most part?
Except the frog pond was mentioned in her letter, and I really think it's important.
Okay.
I'll tell you about the frog pond though. When Franny Tupper owned that property where you own now, she was always complaining that the runoff from the stream, there's an actual stream that comes down through her property, goes through a little culvert into the frog pond. And she kept on the Corps of Engineers to come and dredge it out, because she said it's just going all over the place. And it does sometimes flood the road, and you'll be driving and there'll be ducks floating on the road, and you're like, okay, now what do I do? Get around that.
Okay.
But part of the character.
It's definitely part of the character.
But it's an issue because the water is there.
Okay. Yeah. You have a question?
I'd like to make a comment on that, may I?
If it's quick.
Yes, it will be quick. I think the frog pond was created when the railroad went through across a piece of Lake Mascoma. That's a piece of Lake Mascoma. And that the water in Lake Mascoma after those rainstorms is up, and the frog pond goes up.
Yeah.
But the flooding risk comes from the hill. It comes from the cemetery. It doesn't come from the frog pond.
It doesn't come from the lake.
It comes from the runoff coming down.
Not anymore,
The house
because
on
the
that
railroad
property
blocked
does
it
have
off.
itself.
Yeah, I know, but the level of that pond reaches so high, I agree.
It goes across the road.
But no, it's the runoff that creates that extra water.
We have an abutter that is.
Yes, I'm trying, okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience. Please state your name and
Lois
address.
Struckoff. And I'm in a butter off Sergeant Street. Dan mentioned early about the concern about the lake. The runoff goes into the frog pond. There is a culvert that goes into the lake. FYI.
Yeah, there's another one in front of Lowell's house.
Well, water goes down now.
There's a culvert there.
Okay. I think we've covered all the abutters. If anyone from the general public would like to make a succinct comment, yes? Please state your name.
I'm John Klug, live up on Klug Road. I'm almost a lifetime resident of Enfield, a 16-year veteran of the Enfield Select Board. I think that last election, we had a vote on zoning changes, and those zoning changes would have been quite friendly, I think, to this development. And the voters turned it down flat. I think that you should kick a can down the road. They're probably going to put those zoning regulations up again, maybe with some tweaking, and let us see what the people think. Thank you.
Okay, Sharon.
Hi, I'm Sharon Boucher from Enfield. And I'm sorry, what's your name?
Adam.
Adam. So Adam, just clarification, you had talked
Well, maybe
about...
they do legally.
you had talked about the sale of these units, but then you had also talked about that they would be, so they're going to pay a condominium fee as well. So in addition to the price of the unit that the people pay, they will have an ongoing cost. It concerns me about not selling the units outright, because I think what happens economically right now is that people then, those rates go up and people have to sell because they can't afford to stay there. And we really do need homes, and we really do need people who are going to stay in our community and become part of our community. Yeah, I can't solve that problem, but it's a concern. There was also just one mention on the bottom of the woman's letter that got paraphrased, and I think it just bears mentioning. While agreeing we need more housing in Enfield, we need both affordable and workforce housing, not housing out of the reach of single people, lower wage earning families, or what first-time home buyers. If buyers leave the area but keep the condos as rentals, will that rent be affordable? So that's just something to bring to the table.
So there's going to be HOA fees.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think it's time to move to discussion.
I want to get back to the water.
I would like to open discussion.
I lost the card because I couldn't water
Okay.
the garden.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a motion.
And they're gonna put a bunch more
You have to
houses in.
close the
You can just do it.
participation.
Okay, yeah. I hereby close public discussion, and we're gonna start the discussion of the measure by the board. Thank you.
I know there's a lot thrown out there. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Very much appreciated. Would you like to give Adam maybe a chance to respond to some of the things that were thrown at you? At the beginning, we said we'd wait until the end.
Okay, yeah, I guess if you want to take a few minutes, and there was been a lot of questions.
Well, one, I would love to, where we're at right now in the process is basically the first step. And there's a lot, this is not a final site plan. And so what I would love to do, once the tenants who are currently living on this site move out, is invite you all to the property and have an open house and take your feedback, so that as we work from where we are today, and based on whether the variance is granted or not, we can take in your feedback, your concerns, your input, and create an ultimately better community for the entire neighborhood. So one, I appreciate the comments, and it's really helpful to get your feedback as people who have lived here for so long. So I make that commitment to you. It'll be sometime this summer. We'd love to, again, open up the property and invite you over. I will, just as a maybe illustrative tool, one area that's been a concern to people is the clear cutting of trees over here. I will say this is the only thing that I'm showing on this plan that is by right in your current zoning today. If I don't get a variance like this, the entire site becomes like this, and that's what I'm seeking the variance to prevent, is I think an aspect of the site that is of concern to you all. It's a very valid concern and one that I take seriously, but I do just want to illustrate, like, that is what by right in this zone looks like. It's not what I think you all would like. The other by right is a very large single building, which I also think you would not like. So I would like, between reception of a variance, if it's granted or not, the opportunity to sit down with you and get your feedback, and it's very valuable to me. We care a lot about how stormwater runoff happens on this site. We understand we're at the base of the hill, and it's part of a larger ecosystem. That's why the first thing we did, before we even hired an engineer actually, was to hire a wetland scientist to help us study the site, how it fits into the overall ecology of this area, how it can impact the wake and the watershed. We really do think that when we're done building this, because we'll have an active stormwater management system in place, the stormwater runoff that you're experiencing will actually be improved compared to what it is today. Today it just runs off as it runs off. After this, we'll have active management in place. That's a part of what is needed for our state permitting to even move this forward. We cannot build without an adequate stormwater management system. But I think that the main commitment I'd like to make to y'all is I would love to have you all over to hear your insights on what we can do to create a community that you feel you'd be proud to walk past every day on Main Street. I think it's a beautiful place, it's a beautiful neighborhood you have, and I really appreciate the passion that everyone has for this area. I think that's, to me, it means it's a great place to live, and that's a part of why I think it'd be special to open that up to a few more people. And that's the heart of what I'm hoping to do, and love your input to help make development that fits with what you think of your neighborhood.
How long will this whole project take? Do you have any idea?
Construction start to end, you mean?
Say you were granted the variance. Wait a minute.
The public portion is closed, I want to.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Thank you.
I'll ask you later when they're not listening.
Yeah, all right.
Keep you out of trouble.
Thank you, Tim. Okay.
I'm a stickler for that.
All right. So Adam's had a chance to rebut. Who wants to start our portion of the discussion?
Can I ask Adam a question?
Yeah.
I suppose.
You're the chair, if you don't want me to.
Well, I'd like to move on. It's 8:45.
I don't really care about the time. If we have to, I would suggest we continue this. This is too important to drive our decisions based on time.
Okay.
Adam, you heard some really, really passionate points of view here.
I think that's a good idea.
What about the idea of doing your meeting first, hearing all of the input, get as much time as you want, people can have as much time as they want, and then maybe resubmit? Is that something you would consider?
What I would say is there's a lot of ways that a site plan could go, and understand if we have a variance that would allow us to have, in these rough locations and these numbers, housing of this type fundamentally changes what we're able to build. And so if you don't grant the variance, what we build is very different and the input we'd receive is different. So I think that the decision you all make on whether to grant or not grant the variance is kind of fundamental to reception of input and good ideas to make it as good as it can be from here.
And I think you have good intent, and I'm trying to find a solution here. And maybe there isn't one. But I share a lot of the concerns that were addressed, and I think it's going to impact the way I look at these 5 criteria. And I'm speaking only to myself. I have a ton of questions. And if you wanted to try and take a risk and maybe listen before you got the variance or not got the variance, it might be a win-win. But that's up to you. I can't tell you what to do.
Dan, what I'm seeing here is that this is his vision for this land. And these good people are used to seeing empty fields here. And anything he puts here is not going to be an empty field. So they're not going to be happy with anything. Let me finish.
That's not true.
That's not so.
No, sir.
All right, so the alternatives are a bunch of apartment buildings. Are you going to be
No, that
happy?
is not true. If he had stuck to the original plan, nobody probably would have cared because, well, Nicole would have. But
Well,
that's
Mr.
not
Chairman,
true.
for the record, if they wanted to put a 75-foot high multi-unit building like you see at Laramie in that one space, it could be done.
That's, okay, but that's not what we were
It's not what I
talking
would
about.
want, by the
We're
way.
not saying, you know, we're not saying that.
That's, I think.
We're concerned about
Look.
the number of units.
This is, the public portion is over. This is the time for the zoning board to discuss with Adam.
So we should
Period.
leave? So we should leave now?
No, you can still, for
Oh,
transparency
keep our mouths
purposes.
shut?
Well, frankly, let us debate the matter. You've had your input.
Could I ask, could you share that presentation again? Could you go through the process that you would have to go through for approvals, just so we have that in front of us to discuss?
Yes.
Because this is the first step of multiple things, so it's not end all be all tonight.
Where I was going to.
Yep, let me just rejoin the meeting.
Or maybe Rob's got it.
Rob does not have it on that. I can share if he lets me share, and I'll just share my screen again.
Well, the criteria is the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. That's the first criteria we need to discuss.
but we're not, that's not.
The milestones.
Kyle asked for these milestones, and that was gonna be the first point I was gonna make, Bill, if I just give 10 seconds here, is that we are voting strictly on the specific portion as it relates to putting multiple buildings on this lot. The site and all the stuff is a kind of, I wanna say it's a conceptual piece, but it is not by any means the plan. What we're being asked to do is solely approve whether you can put that many buildings on that much land. We'll let
According to
you
the
do-
zoning ordinance.
We'll give you a variance from the zoning ordinance. And we have the authority to do that our own limits or with leaving it as is, however we want to. But the rest of the stuff, all that other stuff, when you go right down, like the wetland crossing, that's another hearing.
Yeah.
The planning board site plan review is going to be multiple hearings. That will be 3, 4, I mean, you've seen what Laramie's been. The subdivision, probably not a big deal. The DES stuff, there's 2 permits that have to be given and DOT has to approve the highway. That's all downstream. We are only dealing with, can you put this number of lots, number of houses on this amount of land, period. It's not the overall site or where the common spaces will be or where the driveway goes. That's not within our purview tonight.
So, Tim, I would respectfully agree with some of what you said, but disagree with some of what you said.
Well, I don't think it's not relevant. I just don't think we're voting on that other stuff.
No, we're not voting on that other stuff, but in order to make a decision on whether a variance is granted or not, I need to hear more about these wetlands. I want to hear from the Conservation Commission, what they think about this. All I know right now, I didn't even get a map that showed wetlands on here. So,
But then there's other checks for the wetlands. Why can't we leave that to those and just consider the issue at hand?
Because the first criteria states the variance will not be contrary to public interest.
Thank you.
The wetlands are the public interest. And if I don't understand them, I can't weigh in on that. So I need to understand.
Don't
it.
you have to trust that the other regulations will protect the wetlands?
No, I don't. No, I don't. The buck stops here, and we need to make decisions. And I can't kick a can down the road and say somebody else will take care of that. That's not why we were elected.
Hypothetical. What if Adam secretly wanted to build like a drug den here? Okay? No, this is ridiculous, right? But wouldn't we have to rely on the police and fire protection to like crack that down? What I'm trying to say is that we can't possibly anticipate every possible.
I know we can't
future
anticipate every possible thing, but I think there's a lot of things we can ask him to come back with. I would like to see him come back with a certified appraiser's point of view on the impact of the value of the surrounding properties. I'd like to see a more detailed site plan showing wetlands, slopes, etc. I would like to get the point of view of our Conservation Commission. I would like to the consideration of the Mascoma Watershed Management Plan. I'd like an opportunity to walk the property. I'd like to hear the Heritage Commission's point of view. And I would like to see a written review of everything that the public said. We have one letter. I'm not gonna remember everything everybody said, so I wanna get the minutes to show everything everybody said. And I'm gonna go through this. Some really legitimate stuff came out there. I'm not gonna say, yes, this is approved, when somebody thinks he's gonna like take over a private road. We need to, I'm not there. I would be a no right now, a hard no. And I would try to convince everybody else to be a no.
Yes, well.
It sounds like a good idea maybe to continue this, to allow for a site visit. Allow the applicant to furnish some additional information as Dan has been alluding to. I think that the public would like the site visit as well, would appreciate that to get better familiarity with what he's proposing. Maybe get furnished some additional maps or data. I know the Conservation Commission chair is here. They did have some discussion at their most recent meeting. They would have time to have another meeting. So is that a good way forward to continue this?
Yeah, I think a motion is appropriate.
Can I just be heard on something first? You know that I have a standing objection to continuing any hearing ever. I do. I just do. Flat out make the decision. I can tell you the one thing flat out that will not change my mind here is that we did have an election. And we did have on the ballot, do you want to expand density, number of units in R1 districts in the village. And it was a resounding no. And so when I look at spirit of the ordinance, I can't get there because we just did this. We just had a vote on this in our town. And it's the most current information is, what do you want to do with this village district? And it absolutely tanked because of this exact kind of concept. And I just don't know that I can ever get to spirit of the ordinance. I want to say, on the flip side, in general concept of these communal spaces and actually the contrast between this and other developments is stark to me. It is, much more thought went into this, and I really do love that idea, but I just cannot get past the spirit of the ordinance being met here ever. We just voted on this months ago, and when I say we, I don't mean we, I mean the big we, and that's really, it's the one thing I get hung up on, and I don't know that I've ever gotten hung up on that criteria alone. But as you know, that's one thing. We're not gonna, any one of these fails and the whole thing fails. And I just feel really bound by that vote, that this is what people voted against, the whole town.
Okay.
Move along.
All right, do you want to make a motion, Dan?
I move that we continue this hearing at a future time, perhaps at our July meeting after a site visit.
I'll second.
July 14th is our next scheduled.
All in favor of the motion as stated by Susan?
Nay.
Motion carried.
3-1.
Yeah, I'll abstain.
Because we have so much more business to do tonight.
We don't have much more business to do.
Thank you.
Rob,
if you could arrange a site.
I'll coordinate with Rob on the site visit. Yes.
It would most likely be before the meeting.
Yep.
That day, the 14th.
What would be?
A site visit.
Oh.
So I will get working on that.
We'll see you out there.
Yeah. So probably something like 5 o'clock.
Are you inviting the public to that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, is there anything else you want to request from the applicant prior to the meeting or suggest that he bring?
As long as you guys are okay.
I mean, if you would like to provide some of the material Dan has requested,
It's in my rights.
that might be in your interest.
Can I add something?
Yes, sir.
If we're able to, just getting like a rough idea even of what it would like if it's variance or if it's not approved, what that.
Absolutely. I'll create a couple alternatives to show you. Maybe the one item specific to wetlands, because it does take a little more work to produce that. And ultimately, the wetland impact is something I have to come back to you for a special exception. It'll receive the weigh-in of the Conservation Commission, and there's a state process to govern it. So I will have to come, like, if I get my variance, whenever I get my variance, and then I fail your bar for the wetland impact,
Back to the drawing
back to
board.
the drawing board. So it gets in my best interest to provide you something good. That is a part of your jurisdictional area that I will have to come back for at a later date.
So if you could find something in the middle maybe, because at this point I have nothing on the wetland. I mean, you had this and I thought there was gonna be something in here, and there's not. So, other than what I saw on the screen, I have nothing. So if you give me a little bit more.
Okay.
And I'm not saying we're gonna go all as far as the special exception.
Do you want to address both in one meeting, or do you think that's beyond too much scope? Okay.
No, I think it's beyond.
We can get there.
Adam, thank you very much.
No, I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate everyone's feedback. Thank you. And we'll have a site visit scheduled. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We gotta go on, we gotta do
Okay, do you want to do the minutes first?
I love this place.
whatever.
I know.
Sure.
Is it on the, is this on the agenda?
If you want, I have a whole bag of books over on. We're not kind of go through things.
Hold on.
This one's kind
I
of
get,
fun.
this is your The meeting?
We're talking years, right? I mean.
Show me what's on there.
With this number of homes, it might be.
Thank you.
Just continue.
Yeah,
I've already yelled twice about noise.
All right,
Yeah.
Do it third.
All right, thank you.
Go talk in the lobby.
Thank you.
It's fine.
Thanks for your attention.
I
I have a
can't.
heart attack.
I,
I'm tired.
Thank you, Sharon.
my hearing is getting worse, but.
Rob, the next order of business, I believe, is the meeting minutes.
Yes, does everybody have copies?
I do.
I didn't find any mistakes on the minutes.
Wow, Susan didn't have any. I make a motion to pass the minutes from April 14th.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Celia, Christina?
Aye.
All right.
That may be a first, I'm not sure. Maybe a
Why did you
first.
say that?
Nice job,
Finally got his
Kristen.
spelling right.
Really?
Nice job.
This is an
Okay.
excellent.
Before we move on to anything else, can I just say, Bill, nice job in a very tough situation.
Yeah, oh, really?
I'm sorry if it was a little rough, but.
No.
No, I just.
For my trial by fire, right?
Yeah,
Nice job.
it's hard to hear though, and that's what I kept saying, is like,
They've got
they're
to
whispering
stand
back
up
there,
when they
but it's
speak.
this room, and
Yeah.
for years, we've known this, like,
We could be upstairs in Whitney Hall if you think this is bad.
well, I know. Well,
Sharing amongst themselves.
Yes.
The community, that's what I mean, the community building's not much better, but I
Yeah,
don't know what the
community
answer
buildings
That's
is.
worse.
Acoustic tiles,
better.
those wall tiles, absorb
Honestly,
sound.
probably would make a
big difference on that wall.
That would make
I
a
don't
huge
know.
difference.
I'm,
Maybe behind
I'm
us.
wondering,
Let's keep going.
giving people that are speaking a microphone.
Maybe just get louder noise. But anyway. Okay, Susan has brought to my attention our lovely summons to court.
I can give you a quick update.
Yes, please.
So we have obviously received a summons, complaint summons that went immediately to our law firm. We were on a track with them to mount our defense when a weekend went by and they called us and said they can't represent us. It turns out that the law firm that we use, Upton and Hatfield in Concord, has previously represented the appellant in this case. And so they have essentially recused themselves from the case and gave us a reference to a different law firm. And so we are now working with them.
Who is
it? Hang on, I'll get you the name.
Yeah.
It's another very,
It's not Gallagher, Callahan, Gartrell.
nope,
Like
you know
those
that?
guys. They're really, they're.
I'll give you the name,
there.
hold on.
Their package is great.
Here we go.
Ah.
BCM Environmental and Land Law, PLLC.
Okay.
So we've had meetings with them. They are now representing us. I have assembled what's called the certified record, which is everything. Minutes, agendas, applications, maps, electronic correspondence, notices, you name it, everything that we did. It's a very extensive file. They will essentially print those and share them with council. It's a process called disclosure. You guys probably know it from watching Law and Order. And so there is a conference scheduled at the court with the judge, just basically outline the way forward. They'll set essentially a hearing date for the attorneys, give them some time to prepare and get all their ducks in a row. I will keep you guys informed on that. My intention would be to attend. I think you remember we went down last time. Everything's consolidated on one docket now for land use at Hillsborough South, I believe it's called. It's at Manchester on Chestnut Street. Judge Glass, who was the same judge we were before last time. Our attorney thinks we've got a really good case.
I'm gonna be interested to see what they weigh in on the concept that I heard again tonight, which is you purchase something knowing it's non-conforming and then apply for a variance and try and you say hardship. And I'm kind of curious, like, where they come down on that, because it has come up before here, and it will come up again. And it's a point of law that, I mean, maybe they don't get there, maybe they look at everything else, but it's something I'm curious about.
Any correspondence that I receive, I will share out as soon as I get it to you guys.
One of the things we had, I was on the zoning board when this happened before. When we don't go, our
Right.
lawyer goes, and the judge reads our minutes and looks at our process and sees if we made any mistakes, which is why I've been yelling at you all the time. We gotta be really careful about how we do this, because if she goes to court, winning depends on the fact that we did everything correctly and said everything correctly. It's scary.
I'm not scared.
No.
I think we've done
An everyday
everything
thing
very
for me.
well with this case.
The attorney that I spoke with, the guy that's gonna represent us, he feels like we've done a good job. He's reviewed stuff already, and he thinks we got a real strong case.
Well, she's filled in the roadway with gravel, the side of the road with gravel. It's quite fancy.
Yeah, you may not want to go
talk about
let's not get into
specifics.
But we have to be so careful.
But
with
I'm
these
absolutely
things.
with you, and I will, as that case is continued, the one thing that we'll want, when we come back into session on this application right here, so we want to get that findings of fact. That didn't come up at all tonight. We want to make sure we get that dialed right in. That becomes a real essential piece of
Well,
information.
I don't think we got there in the
Right, so we'll have some
deliberations.
time.
What
But-
does it get to?
It's called the findings of fact.
Oh, yeah, right. But
I've
we
got a
haven't gotten
worksheet.
there
You
yet.
have it? Have you started working
I
on
filled it out and I quit where we adjourned.
Okay, fantastic. So what we'll want to do when we come back into session is go over that in public session
Yeah,
and make sure you guys are all in agreement as to what's on there, so that and
Yeah,
there may be
but
other stuff that
there
others.
has
Yeah,
to be
because
findings of fact.
It's
It
not,
has to be correct, but there wasn't much we could do today with it. I put down that people disagree.
Yes.
so the next step is, there'll be a hearing scheduled and that attorney will go, and then, the question is if it's, whether we're seeing, my question to you, and I did talk to you about some other properties right in that same stretch, is I'm concerned that stretch of the lake on 4A right there is turning into, well, they got away with it, I'm gonna do it. They did it, I'm gonna do it. And it is.
And as I showed you.
Yeah, it's not, and DES is gonna tell people, no, you can't do that, but
And that garage.
What are you talking about?
Just next to
now?
her
You
house.
talking about 4A?
yes.
Oh.
Yeah, that garage that they built right on the road and right on the
Yeah,
lake.
there's two properties DES is now taking enforcement action on. I forwarded it to you guys. You guys looked at that in your meeting. There's two properties right in that area
Yeah,
that
that-
DES has taken.
The concrete Lego walls. that went in
Shoreland violation.
Without any.
Good land,
good.
good, I'm glad.
Well, I mean, like I said, I'm just concerned that there's kind of a stretch there, and there's a lot of squirrely kind of stuff happening without mentioning any specific cases really, but there are a few in that, and that is a very dense area already. There are a ton of tiny little, there's shacks that turned into, and I would guess some of them are Airbnb too, at this point, but I just hope it's not a pattern that we're just seeing, I was gonna ask
Don't they
Tiffany
have
if
to
they've
go
had
before the
anything on
planning
that
board
side.
to Get an Airbnb?
Not for short-term rentals, no.
No,
If there were gonna be a commercial B&B,
no, they just don't.
I think you ought to add short-term because
Yeah, well,
short-term is a
we
lake.
tried.
It failed, it fails a lot of places.
Yes.
You'd be surprised.
Okay, I think
Move to adjourn.
seconded. All in favor?
I was gonna abstain, but
It's 9:09.
keep my packet with me, Rob, I'm not giving it back to you. I want it again.
Everybody, just go over the